Northwestern. It's time again for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show covering fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation and destinations right here in the region you live and play in. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the world-famous wedding ring spinner, by Loophole, America's Optics Authority, and by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Northwestern Outdoors is also sponsored by Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon, where you'll find both nature and fun. By Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering you the affordable Canadian fishing trip of a lifetime. And by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. So grab your fishing rod or hunting gear, load up the boat or lace up your boots, and let's head outdoors with your host, John Cruz.
We start off the show by welcoming back an old friend and affiliate back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio and to our new sister show, America Outdoors Radio. KBNH, AM 1230, also known as Harney County Radio, broadcast our show for several years to some 10,000 residents in Eastern Oregon. And having been to this part of the state to fish and hike and bike and check out the wildlife and scenery, I've got to tell you, I love this part of the Northwest. Unfortunately, the station went off the air for well over a year, but I'm happy to report that thanks to the efforts of Chris Pruitt and Starlight Broadcasting, this small-town station is back on the airwaves, and we are thrilled to be back on the air with them. We've got a great show for you this morning. We'll be talking to Dan Clore. He is the owner of Deep Timber Sounds in Starkey, Oregon. He's got some great advice about elk calling that will help you get a bull this season, and he's going to demonstrate some of the calls and tactics he uses to get close to those bulls. Lance Mers is back for an extended Max Minute to share a new and improved Max Lure product with you that will slay the walleye. And then we'll have the pleasure of talking to Avery Outdoors pro staffer Kent Contreras about duck hunting and specifically about duck decoys. There is a whole science to this topic, and we are going to dive right into it. With Harney County and our affiliate, KBNH in mind, we'll chat with Denny Thomas again for the first time in a while. He's the owner of B&B Sporting Goods in Hines, and it turns out there's quite a bit of hunting to be had in this part of Eastern Oregon in November that you are going to want to hear about. On the outdoors news front, we've got troubling news about a fish kill on Wyoming's Shoshone River, more troubling news about orca whales dying of starvation in Puget Sound, and proof that ignorance does not stand in the way of becoming a member of Congress in this United States. As usual, we've got several upcoming events to tell you about taking place at Sportsman's Warehouse stores and at other locales as well. And we'll also give away another $25 gift card from Sportsman's Warehouse during our trivia question of the week. But before we get into all of this, Matt Rice has got a great hunting story about an Idaho moose hunt with some complications along the way. It's all part of Sportsman Spotlight, that great feature we bring to you every week courtesy of the Ag Information Network. Sportsman Spotlight is sponsored by Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering all-inclusive fishing vacations for salmon, halibut, and more out of Port Hardy, BC. Check out his website at coastwidesportsfishing.com.
This is Sportsman Spotlight with Matt and Tom. Not every hunting trip goes as planned. In fact, the majority of them don't. But that's what keeps us coming back for more. Justin Gibbons of Limitless Outdoors shares an adventure he won't soon forget as he began his once-in-a-lifetime moose hunt in Idaho.
I started looking through Base Map for some moose units and found a really good backcountry one down in central Idaho. So one of my friends told me I should go up to this upper trail, which was shorter to get in, but he neglected to tell me how bad the road was, and it had been raining for probably, a week straight. And I came around this corner coming down a real steep grade. And what happened is there was a little log right up against the edge of the road. And the road was just super slick. And it caught one of the trailer tires and just sucked it just far enough over the edge when I came around that corner that I lost the whole thing over. Yeah, I was sitting at a 45-degree angle, crushed the box, and was just being suspended by the box and the hitch over the hillside. I had to make sure the door would open all the way on the first try. And I did. And I got it open. And so trying to get him through a narrow door, he had to push her uphill and then come down through. But then after that, I could get all the other ones out pretty easy.
You just never know what kind of pinch you're going to find yourself in when you're in the mountains. That's why it's always a good idea to be prepared. Justin's saving grace that day was a shovel. And, of course, we're all glad the horses turned out okay, too. Check out the pictures of Justin's moose on our Sportsman Spotlight Facebook page. You've just heard Sportsman Spotlight with Matt Rice. For more information, visit us online at sportsmanspotlight.com.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, hard-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
Wake up to winter in Wallowa County. Grab your camera and don your skis for some Nordic skiing adventure at Salt Creek Summit or Wallowa Lake. Or spend the day on the family-friendly slopes of Fergie Ridge. Or slip into a set of skates and enjoy some time on the ice at our outdoor ice rink. Need to warm up? Then grab a cup of coffee or hot chocolate at one of our fine coffee and confectionery shops. And when evening comes, enjoy some of Wallowa County's fine dining and gaze at the stars before you dream of tomorrow's adventures. Your winter adventure begins at www.wallawacountychamber.com.
Leupold has been building optics in Oregon since 1907, and Leupold binoculars bring excellent optical performance and modern styling to the serious outdoorsman. Whether you're a boater, birder, backpacker, or hunter, Leupold's state-of-the-art binocular lines are sure to fit your needs. Visit Leupold.com or your local Cabela's, Bi-Mart, or Sportsman's Warehouse to see the full line of Leupold optics.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors. I'm John Cruz, and it is the height of elk season, and we thought that we'd get an expert on board to help you get a bull this year. His name, Dan Klur. He is the owner of Deep Timber Sounds. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, you live right in the heart of elk country in Starkey, Oregon, and I thought with your expertise in calling elk, and I get to hear you at all the sportsman shows. As a matter of fact, folks, if you hear elk calls at sportsman shows in the Northwest, there's a good chance that Dan is blowing those calls. Let's talk about 3 calls that you really need to master to call in elk at this time of year. Go ahead and tell our listeners just a little bit about elk calling in general and why it's important in November.
Well, elk calling can be used in many different ways while you're hunting, not only to cover your own sound as you move through the woods, but to locate animals that may be out in front of you a couple, 200-300 yards. The calls that I like to use during our rifle season is a combination of cow calls, and I'll demonstrate a couple of those. And I got 2 different calls that we brought forward. One is our cow call by itself, and one of them is the bugle, which we do cow calls through as well. So if I'm moving through the woods and I'm, let's say, walking up a drainage, the calls I'll do will be starting with this one as we move along. And that's a communication call from herd animal to herd animal as you move through the woods. And then I will throw out every once in a while a very soft locator bugle. And so it'll just be a real mellow bugle like this.
You know, Dan, that is fascinating to me. I always envision people calling elk from a stationary point, and then locating them, and then maybe, trying to get them in closer or stalking from there. But I've never thought of, and it makes perfect sense now that you say it, covering your own tracks, so to speak, by calling as you go and basically imitating a cow or bull elk as you're moving along a drainage or somewhere.
Yeah, what you're trying to do is you're trying to imitate that herd. And the bull he'll call out, especially in the late season. We have that secondary rut that comes in effect, and any cow that wasn't bred in the first go-around in September is going to come back into estrus again, in that 27-day period after her first estrus. 27 days later, she'll come back into estrus again.
Very interesting. So the classic elk bugle, when is the time to use that?
The classic elk bugle? Your elk bugle, the one I did, is more of a locator call, and that's a call that I'll use just as we're, moving up a drainage as I blend it with cow calls. So I sound like that original herd going up that drainage. But there's a call that a cow elk will do. If she's in heat and she wants to be bred, she produces what I call a high estrus call, and I'll demonstrate that for you here. And that sound right there is a cow that's going to be calling out to that bull that's moving up that drainage to make that hookup.
Dan, do you just spend a lot of time observing elk and listening to elk, and is that how you come up with these calls and understand the sounds that they're making?
Well, after 2 studies on them, 12-year studies each, yeah.
What other calls should hunters be able to master or use to go ahead and help them bag a bull?
Well, we have this little cow call here, and it's really simple for the hunter just to grab off the shelf and go with. It's a call that you can land your lower lip and just basically blow air across the reed. You don't have to bite or pull on it or push on it. So it's something that they can do real quick, and it does a couple calls like this will help those guys, move through the woods and locate elk. And those 2 little calls right there, I use it quite a bit as I'm moving through the woods.
We're talking about moving through the woods. What about the hunter who basically is, on a ridgeline or on a hill or wherever they're going to be and they're stationary? What kind of call should they use to basically attract?
Well, the call I demonstrated on the first go-round, anytime you have elk locating other elk, there's basic herd sounds that they use. And so the sounds that I just did are those basic herd sounds. And whether you're stationary or you're moving, those calls can be used effectively to bring those animals to you.
Interesting. Really interesting. You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio, folks. We're talking to Dan Kleur. He is the owner of Deep Timber Sounds. He makes elk calls, and you'll hear him at sportsman shows around the Northwest demonstrating how to use them. Any other calls that hunters ought to be able to master before they go afield?
Well, for elk, that's about the full range of it. Every once in a while I'll throw a full bugle with grunts, but not very often. We have bagged quite a few nice bulls up in the Stark area during our rifle season. It's the idea that if I get a friend or something that happens to draw a branch bull tag, we'll take him out and call some bulls in for him. So it's actually pretty effective for using the calls during those seasons.
Dan, you not only sell calls and demonstrate how they're used at sportsman shows, but you actually put on calling classes there in Northeast Oregon and other places as well. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, we have our elk calling camp right out of Molalla, Oregon there, and that comes in every August 1st, the first weekend of August every year. We have that calling camp there, and that's out at the Rossi Posse Elk Ranch. Go out there and talk to Brendan Allen, and they'll show you the whole facility there. They got a really nice setup and got some beautiful animals there.
So how much does it cost to participate in that class?
Okay, I give it to the hunters just a killer price. We have $50 for the whole weekend.
Wow.
That offers a 3D archery shoot. That offers a barbecue on Saturday at midday, and then our calling classes are all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And you can come in and set up your camp on a Friday evening, shoot the shoot, wake up in the morning and start taking the class.
Dan, you and I need to talk off the air about raising your prices because you are killing yourself here. This is not a good business model. You're basically giving this away.
Well, because I feel that the hunters are thriving for this information, and I feel that it's better to have knowledgeable hunters in the woods than ignorant hunters in the woods.
Well, I'll give you that. Do you have any other classes that you offer, or is that the one?
No, we have one just out of Madras. I think it's the last weekend of July every year, and we have that up at the Four Aces Ranch, and that's about 22 miles out of Madras. And that's coming towards Biggs and then cutting up the canyon from there to the right. But we also have one just out of La Grande here at the archery range.
So are all these camps the same? Basically come in on Friday, do the archery shoot, spend the night, and then do the elk calling class on Saturday?
No, Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, my goodness. And
they're a 3-day class, actually a 2-day class, but you come in and you set up and you have the option to shoot the archery shoot on the Friday evening.
And is it $50 for all of these?
It's $50 every class.
Dan, we so have to talk about your pricing.
Actually, back the last one that we do is our LeGrand class, and the LeGrand class, they ask for a $15 fee to shoot their course. They set up a 40 course, 40 targets, and we only have 15 targets. And that's what I set up my own self. So, but they asked me to come in and do it there. I think it's just a combination of draw. They are I think they actually are one of the oldest archery clubs in history.
That is amazing. So, folks,
and so we thought it would be a neat historical thing to do that there and bring the elk calling into it.
Absolutely. Dan, we have got to go. But, folks, if you want to find out more about the great calls that Dan makes or sign up for one of these classes at what you just heard, an incredible, absolutely incredible price, go to his website. It's deeptimbersounds.com. That's deeptimbersounds.com. As you've heard, Dan knows his stuff. And meet with him at the sportsman shows, too. He is a wealth of information, and as you can tell, a heck of a nice and giving guy.
And we'll have flyers and stuff at every one of the sportsman shows that we hand out for all those classes as well.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of this great information and for doing what you do for hunters.
All right. Thank you a lot.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after, whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's that time again. It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. With us again, Lance Mers with Max Lure. Lance, walleye. What are your favorite? Give me 3 destinations where you like to fish for walleye in the fall.
Potholes, Banks Lake, Columbia River.
All great choices and all chock full of walleye. And, there's a guide who's actually a Max Lure Pro guide named Shelby Ross who knocks the walleye dead on Potholes Reservoir routinely, and he uses this slow death rig that you guys make. Tell our listeners about this.
Well, we do have a slow death rig, but we also have a super slow death rig.
Oh, for goodness sake. Go on.
The cool thing about the super slow death is that it's got a deeper bend in the hook shank. So what that does is you don't necessarily have to tip that night crawler up in a way to make that hook spin. Okay, so all you got to do is feed that hook up to the top of the eye, pinch it off about 1 inch off the back, and that thing is going to spin like crazy. Now, the other good thing about this is that we've matched the hatch, whether it be mud minnow, whether it be perch, you name it. The fish that walleye like to bite, those are the colors that we made. We've got 8 of them, but this hook is also a thicker gauged wire, so it's not going to bend if you hook into a very large fish.
All right, so for Shelby Ross, time to upgrade to the super slow death rig. And for all of you, too, you might want to give it a try because these lures work for the walleye. Guarantee it. Find out more at maxlure.com and look for these in a sporting goods store near you.
I'm Bob Loomis, and I fish for walleye. Sometimes when I'm out on the water, I feel like a destroyer captain hunting for targets with my electronics. I'm not hunting submarines, though. I'm hunting fish, and when I find that big one on the fish finder, I want to make sure she's going to bite. That's where the Smile Blade Slow Death Rig from Max Lure comes in. The Smile Blade spins and flashes at ultra-slow speeds, and the one-of-a-kind red hook keeps that bait moving in a way the fish can't resist. It's the Smile Blade Slow Death Rig. You're the destroyer. This is your depth charge. Only from Max Lure.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
If you've ever been fishing in Mexico, you know how good it can be, and now you can fish there with the Real News. Take your choice of a trip to Baja's East Cape for roosterfish, marlin, and dorado. These trips are value priced, so you can stretch your dollars in fun. To find out more about fishing Mexico with the Real News, log on to therealnews.com or call 425-334-8966. Again, that's therealnews.com or 425-334-8966 for an incredible adventure.
And it's getting frustrating as I thought to myself, were they coming at all? I blew 3 quick blasts on my wooden goose call. Rain still pouring, it was getting boring. Then I thought I caught a sight of something soaring. A big flock of geese I could barely see. They were coming straight in, shaped like a V. I got myself ready, held my gun steady. A couple seconds more, oh my hands are getting sweaty. I should wait a little longer, but what's the use? I put a finger on the trigger and bust the goose.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors. I'm John Cruz, and it being November, a lot of you are hunting ducks this month. Well, we've got somebody here to help you out with that. His name is Kent Contreras. He is a pro staffer for Avery. That is the manufacturer of all sorts of great waterfowl gear. And Kent, along with several other pro staffers, sends me reports on a regular basis, which I get to share with you to tell you how the duck hunting is going. Kent, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, John.
You know, Kent, this is a tricky month, November, because for much of the month, we're sitting in a situation where we're banging away at those local ducks that have been shot at quite a bit, and we're waiting for the northerns to arrive, and they are coming in dribbles, so to speak, and eventually they will get here. Let's talk about how to bag some of these wary locals and these early northerns with some tips and some advice. I mean, do you think this is in some ways, especially early November, the toughest 2 weeks of the year?
Oh yeah, by far. After the birds get shot at and get educated of where they can and can't take their feeding times and their safe times, it's very difficult. The places that we've seen birds, frequent, you can go back to them after the end of October, and they're not there. They're finding those places that they know are safe, and they're not in the traditional places you've seen them for the past 2 weeks. So it is a very difficult time, you bet.
But on the other hand, you have these waves of northerns coming in. And I guess when I was a kid or as a young hunter, maybe not a kid, but as a younger hunter, I always thought the arrival of the northerns that they all came down at once, that you got all the teal and the widgeon and the mallards and they just came in one wave. But that's not true. Different species, different times.
We see that over in the northeast part of the state is the puddle ducks are here. They have been here and nested throughout the year. And they stick around for most of the season, but they will push out as the weather turns and they get pressure. Our diving birds don't actually come in until later December or January, which is part of those big waves you see in the skies, the flocks of 200, 500 birds flying up at altitude. Most of the time with our puddle ducks, we have a couple of really good seasons. They get educated and they'll start hiding out in the backwaters and ponds that they feel safe in.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about tactics, especially with November in mind. I guess we'll start off with decoys. It used to be the more the better, the bigger the better. Does that still hold true?
That's a good question. We vary our spread numbers as we go along. I like to tell people start small, a dozen or two for your initial spread. If you're getting birds in, stick with that. If they have a tendency to fly off and go look for someplace else, vary the numbers a little bit, and you can drop it down real easy to a dozen, make it look more lifelike. And then if that doesn't work, build it up. Create yourself a nice hole with more numbers. The amount of decoys, it varies from where you're at and what you see. I tell folks that, mimic what you're seeing out there. If the birds are in family groups, set your decoys up in family groups with, 6 to 12 birds in a pocket over here and 6 to 12 decoys in a pocket off to the other side. It does vary. As the season comes along, you'll see the birds start to group up more as opposed to family groups. and that's when we'll start increasing our numbers a little bit in our spreads.
Let's talk about the types of decoys. I think most duck hunters, they own a couple dozen mallard decoys, but you go to the stores and you'll see teal decoys, widgeon decoys. You'll see confidence decoys like heron decoys. Do those matter? Do those really help or not? I
have stuck by the, mantra of change things up. And what I mean by that is, you see birds on the water. There's going to be a widgeon or two in the mix with the mallards. The green-winged teal will be flying in and out. So every spread that I put out, we'll put an assortment of decoys out, and then I'll use mallards for 70, 60% of the spread, and widgeon and teal and pintail to fill in the rest of it. To me, it's a different color, it's a different size, and it gives birds coming in or looking at your spread a little bit more of a different look, more of a natural look. So I always try to use different decoys in our spreads, not sticking with just a single species. That's over water. When I'm in a field, I will just try to mimic what I see the birds doing. If it's geese and mallards in a field, some sheet water, that's all I'll use is full-body mallard decoys and full-body goose decoys. It's what you see. Mimic what you see is what I tell folks. If you're getting mixed species all landing together and feeding together, then do that. Use your what you're seeing out there to mimic.
Great advice. Folks, you're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're talking with Kent Contreras. He is a pro staffer for Avery, the manufacturer of all sorts of things related to waterfowl hunting. Let's talk about the quality of decoys. I've got some friends, I know some guides that swear by flocked decoys. I know others that say, just get your store-bought dozen that are just hard plastic. Does the quality matter or not?
It does matter. And I like to use an analogy of a good clear day when the sun is shining. If you have a decoy that's plastic, doesn't have any flocking on it, and you put a flock decoy right next to it, stand back from it, take a look at it, and you'll see a shine come off of the plastic one, and you'll see an actual, really dull look on that flocked one. It'll keep birds from flaring on that end. At the beginning of the season, people used to say we could put out a bunch of black plastic milk jugs out there and we'd get birds to come in. That's true. Nowadays, with people, more and more hunters out there, the birds are being able to pick out the little things, that glare. Maybe the decoys aren't very realistic looking at the start, but I tell folks, if you're going to do this, if you're going to be a waterfowl hunter, buy quality. It'll help you out in the long run, especially in the later part of the season. As the birds come in and they start to have a month or two of being shot at behind them, they're really looking hard at where they're going and what's there. So if a person can afford it, I really encourage them to go with quality decoys. There's some great ones out there, and you might be able to get away with less decoys with a higher quality one. For those that cannot afford it, for those that are just getting into the game, do what you can. Start learning what the birds are doing and how they're reacting to those decoys. And as you go along, pick up a half a dozen really good quality products, and then maybe the next year another half a dozen, and you'll start to see gains in your harvest. I really believe that.
Well, there you go. There's some great advice from Kent Contreras. We didn't even get to other topics like duck calling and shot shell selection, so we're going to have to save that for another time. But, folks, if you want to find out more about some of the great products that Avery sells, go to their website. It's Avery, A-V-E-R-Y, outdoors.com. That's averyoutdoors.com. Kent Contreras is just one of the, several pro staffers that basically give reports about the Pacific Flyway, and you'll hear those throughout the season right here on Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Kent, thanks for taking the time to educate all of us about better duck hunting.
You bet, John. Thank you.
At Leupold Optics, they guarantee performance. Those other optics companies, they just warranty failure. That's why every Leupold product has a lifetime guarantee. Think of it as a warranty you'll never need to cash in on. Find out more at leupold.com.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking equipment. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. It's time for Outdoors News. Orca whales in Puget Sound are having a very bad year. Earlier this summer, an orca whale died from an infection it received when whale researchers put a tracking tag on the animal. Now, we learn an adult orca has died of starvation, and her 2 calves, if not already dead, soon will be. This latter news comes from the Seattle PI and the Center for Whale Research, which held a press conference about this last week. Founder and chief scientist Ken Balcom made the announcement after the loss of a mother orca and 2 calves who are likely to die or have already died of malnutrition. Ken Balcom is the founder of the Center for Whale Research. These orcas are a real and important part of our community. Their losses reflect our losses. The Puget Sound resident orca population is now down to 80 mammals, the lowest it has been in years. According to Balcom, a lack of food supply for southern resident orcas is caused by dams on the Snake River built by the Army Corps of Engineers. Balcom's solution, as stated in an essay which appeared in National Geographic, is to breach these dams, which provide hydropower for a good portion of eastern Washington and Idaho. Personally, I think Mr. Balcom needs to look closer to home. The issue for Puget Sound orca whales isn't Snake River salmon, it's Puget Sound salmon. Coho salmon numbers from Puget Sound area streams are way down this year, which is why there was no coho fishing in Puget Sound this year. Chinook numbers have also been significantly down, prompting a 1 fish a day limit for anglers right now, and the closure of most of the sound for any salmon fishing at all this summer. These fish are coming from streams in western Washington, streams which for the most part are not impacted by dams, so suggesting that breaching Snake River dams to save Puget Sound orca whales seems disingenuous at best to me. Improving habitat in western Washington streams, many of them degraded by development or pollution, and figuring out what ocean conditions are leading to a lack of survivability for these salmon might be better uses for Balcom's calls for action. Ken Balcom and I do agree on one thing, though. The orca whale population remains threatened in Puget Sound, and we need to find solutions to help them out much sooner than later. From outdoors writer Chris Milgate, we learn routine dam maintenance has resulted in a massive fish kill on the Shoshone River near Cody, Wyoming. Willwood Dam was drawn down for maintenance reasons a couple of weeks ago, and when it was, a massive amount of silt and sediment was released downstream, saturating the Shoshone for miles and killing all the trout and whitefish that lived there. Just as bad as that is the attitude of Todd Singbile, the Willwood Irrigation District Manager, who told a reporter the safety of the contractors is more important than the fish. Local anglers and fishing guides are, as you might imagine, hopping mad about both the fish kill and the cavalier attitude of people like Singbile, who don't seem to care much about the issue. Meanwhile, the state of Wyoming is investigating to see if the irrigation district violated any laws through this drawdown and sediment release. In other news, you don't have to be smart to run for Congress, and 2 candidates vying to be the U.S. representative for the 7th Congressional District in the Seattle area proved that at a candidates forum on October 7th when asked for their views about dams on the Columbia and Snake Rivers. Candidate Brady Walkinshaw says he wants to remove all 4 of the lower Snake River dams in eastern Washington that don't produce hydropower. The problem is, all 4 of these dams do produce hydropower and keep the lights on for the communities in the region. Pramila Jayapal, forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, went even further, stating she wants to remove all the dams on the Columbia and Snake River. That would include Bonneville Dam, Grand Coulee Dam, and everything in between. Apparently, nobody told these candidates that hydropower from the dams in Washington state provides 70% of the state's electricity, to include 40% of Seattle's electricity. Talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face, all in the name of environmental activism and or ignorance. Unfortunately, one of these 2 geniuses is going to get elected in a few days. God help us all. Next up on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, in honor of being back on the air in Harney County on KBNH, which has just come back on over the last week, we thought we would check in with Denny Thomas at B&B Sporting Goods in Hines. Denny, it's been a while. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks, John. It's nice to hear your voice again.
Well, it goes both ways. Let's talk about hunting in November in Harney County, because there's quite a bit of opportunity this month, isn't there?
There really is. You know, the elk hunting is in full swing with the rifles. We had a good season with deer. A lot of good deer were killed this year. And going into November, I expect the same out of the elk.
And when it comes to hunting in Harney County, forgive me, I always think of predator hunting. Coyote hunting is always top of mind in your county.
Oh, yeah. The coyotes this year seem to be doing extremely well. Seems like everywhere I go and everybody I talk to, seeing really good coyotes and good hides this year.
Do you get much in terms of the big predator hunting, bear hunting, or cougar hunting there?
There's some. I wouldn't say there's a lot, but yeah, there's some. You know, it seems like everybody will buy a tag when they're out big game hunting just in case they run across one.
Absolutely. No, I get that completely. Let's turn our attention to birds. Way back in the day when you and I were both young men, Malheur National Wildlife Refuge used to be a great place to go duck hunting, but I understand not so much anymore.
Well, about the only hunting on the refuge, actually, is a pheasant hunt. And I'll be honest, I don't know if they're doing that this year, but the game birds and just the regular public lands have been doing really well. There's a lot of chukar this year.
Well, if you're after exercise, that's always a good bird to go after. What about geese? I understand that in some of the fields around there that goose hunting can be an option.
There is. Actually, I have some of the farmers will come in and ask me to get people to go out and hunt geese in their fields.
You've got to be kidding. I have not heard of a situation like that in years.
I know it. Well, a lot of them will have a new stand, and, you know, those new stands are easy pickings for geese.
Well, and I guess that's where we go ahead and pivot and tell people about your store, because it sounds like people ought to be stopping by your place and asking for some advice on places to hunt.
Well, we can certainly give them some direction in that way.
When it comes to B&B Sporting Goods, where are you located? What are your hours?
We're on 104 Conley, which is right on Highway 20 across from the golf course in Hines. And we're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and on Saturday, 9 to 4.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. If you want to go hunting in Harney County, whether it's for pheasant or whether it's for chukar or whether it's for geese, especially on private lands, there's some opportunity there. Or if you're after elk or after coyotes, that is the place to go, and stop by B&B Sporting Goods for some advice on exactly where to go. Denny, thanks for sharing this with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. I used the cheap scope that came with this rifle when I bought it. And when it came time to pull the trigger, well, let's just say things were a little blurry. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Leupold scope on my rifle. And next time, I'm not going to miss.
Leupold rifle scopes. Check out the whole line at leupold.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking. From camp stoves to cast iron, from smokers to grills, Camp Chef will change the way you cook outdoors. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Whether you're serving breakfast in the backcountry or barbecue on the back patio, savor the simplicity with Camp Chef. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Wake up to winter in Wallowa County. Grab your camera and don your skis for some Nordic skiing adventure at Salt Creek Summit or Wallowa Lake. Or spend the day on the family-friendly slopes of Fergie Ridge. Or slip into a set of skates and enjoy some time on the ice at our outdoor ice rink. Need to warm up? Then grab a cup of coffee or hot chocolate at one of our fine coffee and confectionery shops. And when evening comes, enjoy some of Wallowa County's fine dining and gaze at the stars before you dream of tomorrow's adventures. Your winter adventure begins at www.wallawacountychamber.com.
If you've ever been fishing in Mexico, you know how good it can be, and now you can fish there with the real news. Take your choice of a trip to Baja's East Cape for roosterfish, marlin, and dorado. These trips are value priced, so you can stretch your dollars in fun. To find out more about fishing Mexico with the real news, log on to therealnews.com or call 425-334-8966. Again, that's therealnews.com or 425-334-8966 for an incredible adventure.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a nationwide group working to keep public lands in public hands so future generations can enjoy what we enjoy. Join the group that makes a difference. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after, whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
One more time this week for Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
Let's run through some upcoming events, and perhaps the most important upcoming event is taking place on November 8th. That's Election Day. And I'm not going to tell you how to vote. You're an adult. You can figure that out yourself. But I am going to tell you to vote because your vote matters. And there are a lot of issues at play this election that go way beyond who our president is going to be. So fill out that ballot. Make your voice heard. Some of the things that are at play are Second Amendment rights, public lands management and access, and a whole lot more. This is your day to be part of our great democratic society, so please cast your ballot, make your voice heard. Another day coming up, November 11th, is Veterans Day. It's not only a day to honor our veterans, but also a free day at both our national parks and Washington State Parks, both of which are great places to spend this day with your family or friends and take in the great outdoors. Also taking place on Veterans Day at the Sportsman's Warehouse store in Spokane from 6 p.m. to 7:30, there is a Ladies' Night Out seminar. It's part of a series there, and this time the Well-Armed Women of Spokane will present an exciting seminar featuring local and national personal protection and firearms operators and experts. The cost for this clinic is only $10. Another Veterans Day event taking place at a Sportsman's Warehouse store is going to happen in Helena from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's called After the Harvest, and it asks you the question. You've been successful at taking down a big game animal. Now what do you do? You'll find out exactly what to do during this 2-hour seminar at the Helena Sportsman's Warehouse. And the following day, Saturday, November 12th, from 1 to 2 p.m. at the Klamath Falls Sportsman's Warehouse, you can learn all about waterfowl decoys, just in case you didn't get enough of that information here on the show today. You'll find the best option for the birds you're hunting, and this is a free class. If you want to find out about other seminars and events taking place at Sportsman's Warehouse stores, simply go to the website, sportsmanswarehouse.com. Go to the bottom left portion of the front page, look for store events, and look for events at a store near you. And now it's time for your Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week. And this week's question is found in the night sky. The nickname for this constellation is the Hunter, and you'll find him in the night sky eternally facing Taurus the Bull with his bow in hand. It's easy to find this constellation too. Simply look for the 3 stars that make up its belt in the southern sky. Do you know the name of this constellation, which also includes a nebula? If you do, go to our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Look for the post where we have the question, like our page and give us your answer, or if you prefer, contact us through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. One person who guesses right this week is going to win the $25 gift card we give away every week from Sportsman's Warehouse. While you're on the web, check out the website for our sister show at americaoutdoorsradio.com. You'll find a list of stations carrying our show. We're up to 30 stations now, believe it or not. If you don't have it in your listening area, you can listen to last week's show as a podcast at our front page. Another website where you can hear both America Outdoors Radio and Northwestern Outdoors Radio is found at RenoViolaOutdoors.com. That's the home of WRVO Radio, an internet station dedicated to outdoors programming 24 hours a day. That's all for this week. We again want to say we are thrilled to be sharing the outdoors again with all of our former listeners in Harney County, Oregon, tuning in to KBNH AM 1230, and remain grateful to each and every one of you who tunes into our show in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming every week. It is a pleasure to spend time with you. Until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.